Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. We're here today with an individual whose specialism is us, people. Welcome, Fran Rogers.
Thank you, Ian. It's great to be here.
It's nice. I mean, we've known each other a while, but it's so nice for you to take the time to actually come and talk to me on the podcast.
All right, it's a pleasure.
So let's get things rolling today. Tell us about what do you do?
Okay. I am a professional coach and kind of people development specialist is probably the best way of describing what I do. I have my own business, Butterfly Development, and I work with two like-minded businesses, one of them being ThinkingitBetter. And the work that I do is about helping individuals and teams really flourish and become the best versions of themselves and achieve whatever they want to. So that's me in a nutshell.
Great stuff. So let's start then with the story. So go back as far as you want, and just if you can navigate your journey as to how did you end up as the professional coach with your own business.
Well, yeah, where do I start? So at school, I was quite a shy individual. I think people find that quite interesting when I say that. So I kind of was quite quiet until later on in school. When I went to university and found my voice a little bit, as we tend to. Always wanted, and I had a passion for kind of the psychology. I did a psychology A-level and all of that type of thing. And business was a key one for me. So I went and did a business degree, which had an element of psychology in it as well. So it's human resources. And then I went and started my HR career. And I thoroughly enjoyed those 17 years of working in various different industries, public and private sector, in the aerospace industry, in pharmaceuticals, in more kind of environmental side of things as well, more recently, and supporting leaders and their teams to really develop themselves and focus on how they can be better to achieve what they need to. And then more recently, I've started my own coaching and people development business, Butterfly Development. And yeah, it's probably just before the whole pandemic started, which is always good, isn't it? Yeah. A good challenge.
Yeah.
So it's been a brilliant challenge. I thoroughly enjoy it and just really excited for the future and what that holds and all that good stuff. So that's kind of me and a little bit about me and how I got here.
So I'm curious then. So obviously what we're about on this is trying to understand the role that our environment or our thought process it influenced us. And I guess what I'm curious about is, so with your interest in psychology, what was it you think that led you towards the human resources HR path? What was happening?
That's a good question. Just always really fascinated with understanding how people can affect each other and how relationships, within your family or otherwise happen. I just found it really, really interesting, the psychology side of things and learning about all the different studies that have been done. It's a fairly new field, as we know, really. But it was just fascinating looking at like how people behave and what affects them and how that makes them tick, really. And just reflecting on my own kind of, my parents around me and how they were able to achieve what they've achieved. And that, through the osmosis, obviously a bit of that's rubbed off on me with what I've been able to do in my career so far. So yeah, that's a bit about, does that answer your question?
Yeah. And were there any sort of pressures or influences that drove you down that path, or was that very much a path which you felt you navigated yourself down?
I think I navigated myself down that. I mean, my mother was a teacher. My father was an IT manager, or was an IT manager when he was at work. So they always encouraged me to kind of find what I was interested in. I think, I did have for some time have an interest in the teaching side of things. So it's not dissimilar to what I do now in the kind of the training, the facilitation, the group coaching piece. So I've always had a passion for just supporting other people and helping them be the best.
Yeah.
As a manager and a leader within organisations, as later on in my career, when I managed teams as a HR practitioner, that was always the really, really important part of what I do and how I do it, to enable other people to do their best.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would say one of the key influences has always been my mother. She was driven. She was a deputy head of one of a big school in the area. And back in that time, 20 odd years ago, it wasn't typical for a woman to be in such a leadership role. So absolutely, definitely took some influence from her.
Very good. So you work with people to help them be the best versions of themselves. How do you go about that?
So how I work with people, it depends in what aspect I'm kind of engaged to work with them on. In the training or the workshop side of things. It's about getting the group and getting those individuals feeling comfortable with each other, having a bit of fun, and being able to share ideas and thoughts. In the kind of coaching space, on one-to-one coaching level, it's about helping that individual through really listening to somebody. And I don't mean, so we've talked about this before, Ian, haven't we? It's about not more than just waiting for somebody to finish what they're saying. It's about really listening to what they're saying, how they're coming across in terms of their body language, their tone, and all of those things. What is the essence as well as what they're saying? So for me, that's a big part of my coaching. And then naturally coming from that is some really powerful questions that really help them to think through what they need to think through for themselves so that they can achieve the goal that they want to. So it's very much a kind of offering a safe, confidential space for them to explore with no judgment, with a kind of trusted partner who's there when things can get sometimes a little bit challenging, maybe in the conversation.
Do you ever wish that in your earlier career, and even in your education space, that you had someone who you would have access to who does what you do now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it would have catapulted me. I think to be able to achieve so much more, having that in my early days. I mean, later on in my career, I absolutely had a coach, which is why I'm such an advocate of coaching, and a mentor. And I always think back to the conversations that I had with them at the time, and attribute some of my success in terms of my promotions to having that support. I don't think anybody's an island. I don't think you can do it on your own. I think that's anybody who says that, I think that potentially is something that they maybe need to explore a bit, because we are social animals. We're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah.
So connection is key.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know that you've mentioned before that although you don't work exclusively with ladies, with females, but you do want to support. So just tell me a bit more about that. What drives that?
That's a great question. Thank you. What drives that? For me, it's about, I think there is what I see in my clients and what I've seen in, the younger females that are around me, my nieces and all the rest of it. I see that women tend to shy away from stepping into their confident selves. And there's a theme that comes out quite a bit around that confidence and that resilience. And for me, I've also experienced that as a female, stepping into leadership roles as well. We really tend to doubt ourselves. And for me, I'm really passionate about, just like I've had support from mentors and coaches in the past, to give that support to other women so they can absolutely step into being their true leadership style, not a style that they've read in a book that you have to adopt and be a bit, not your true self, about absolutely stepping into being the leader that is unique to you and your style. And that's why I'm really passionate about it. It's really important, I think.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The type of space that we operate in, we're almost having professionally to be the best version of ourselves. maybe more frequently than maybe some other people allow themselves to be. How do you find that?
Yeah, that I think that is really, really key, and that can make it quite challenging sometimes when you've got competing priorities and things that you've set to deliver, and actually standing back and going, actually, I need to absolutely model what I'm talking to these people about, because otherwise people will, if you say one thing and do another, people will see that, and they will respond to that in a kind of not really being authentic.
Yeah.
Authenticity is really important to me, as it is to many people, and I think it's even more important when we do the work that we do, that we are thinking about those basics, and on that basis, actually managing our boundaries accordingly. In an adult way. So no, I can't do that at the moment because actually that's not a great time for me, but this time is. Let's do it then.
Yeah.
Does that work for you? Just that constant thing, but you can only do that if you're feeling really good about yourself and feeling like you're resourced. Things like sleep are really important for the foundations of that, aren't they?
It's a bit like when you get the little speech on the aeroplane, those times when we could, fly. And you're always told to put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. Yeah,
absolutely. It's exactly that. Because you can't give if you're not looking after yourself in the first instance. Turning that telly off and going to bed at 10 o'clock rather than staying up and watching that extra episode. We all love binge watching, don't we? But that type of thing, just thinking about, being kind to yourself and doing what's best for you.
Being kind to yourself. Yeah, that's something that's a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a word you've mentioned quite a few times, and I know it's something which is from the conversations we've had previously is important to you. You mentioned resilience.
Yeah.
And it's become almost quite a topical word. And I know that it's maybe not a word which everyone maybe understands. So when you talk about resilience, personal resilience, what do you mean?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Yes. It is a word that we have banded around for the last couple of years, isn't it? Especially with the pandemic. Resilience has been important to me prior to that, largely because of my own experiences. I've had really difficult times in my past. I lost my mother. Unfortunately, passed away. She took her own life, Ian, and that was really hard, really hard. But because of that. I have learnt that I can get through quite a lot because of those types of things.
Yeah.
And we all have things like that happen to us that we can draw from to really boost our resilience, and just remember that actually we are okay.
Yeah.
And we will be okay. And when these times in our lives come along, we just need to dig deep and remember who we are, and get that support around us as well. So for me, resilience from a personal journey perspective, but also, it's been really important as part of my teams that I've been when I've led teams before, where, you've got to make sure that you are feeling good. Yeah. You've got to feel resilient. What's the point otherwise? What is the point in life if you're doing things that you're not enjoying because you're just not feeling yourself?
And actually, it's okay to not be okay sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, it absolutely is. And it's okay to ask for help. Actually, it's a sign of strength, isn't it?
Because it's interesting, isn't it? I think some people sometimes perceive that resilience means that you're always tough and you're always good, whereas really what we're saying is resilience is it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing that you can do something about it and it will pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's asking yourself some really pertinent questions and stopping and thinking, how am I feeling today? How resilient am I feeling today? And what do I need to do to make myself feel more resilient?
That's brilliant. Love that. Okay, changing tack a little bit. Let's talk a bit about, rather than individual behaviour, let's talk about collective. Let's talk about culture.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've done work in many, many different sectors, private and public. Just curious about what you've observed in any cultural differences in those different spaces, or have you observed any?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's an interesting one because with my background, that question comes up quite a bit in terms of what's the difference between the public and private sector, and is there one? I guess my answer to that is there's so many subcultures as well, and overarching that, some big cultures. But I think for me, I think some of them can be quite nurturing. Other cultures can be quite business orientated and feel quite corporate. The experience that I've had has been in, irrespective of what sector, has been in complex matrix organisations. So it can be really challenging for leaders in that space, can't it? In those cultures, to kind of try and navigate their own success and their team's success in that with that background. I'm really interested in this systemic kind of constellations coaching side of things as well, where we kind of think about organisations as a growing organism or as a living organism, and if you pull one thing, it creates a ripple effect. And I think that's one of the key things that links culture with actually leadership action. And going back to what we were saying before, people will follow what you do, not what you say as a leader. So if you say as a leader, everybody needs to look after themselves, be really, really resilient, make sure you're not doing too many long hours, but that leader is there visually working really late, sending emails out at times which perhaps is kind of really late at night or early in the morning. It could be that leader works well with their energy, that time of thing, but it's about having that conversation with their team, isn't it? To say, this is how I work, but I'm not expecting you to do the same. So it's about role modelling those expectations.
Because people will feel implied pressure, won't they, sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they'll take the non-visual influence of a leader rather than necessarily, as you say, it's what they do, not what they say.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna flip away from work now. So question first of all: individual success or team success?
Team success for me is the preference rather than individual. For me personally, I really like to see. I get so much from having a collective success. Like the netball team that I'm part of.
I was going to ask you about that, so that's great. Good cue.
There we go.
So tell us about that and netball.
Yeah. So it absolutely is so brilliant when the team comes together and is able to perform at their best because they're all supporting each other. And that's great. It's even more brilliant when we get a win, but it really is important when we get hard times as well. We're all individuals, but we all support each other outside of the netball games. And I wouldn't socialise with a group of women which are so diverse in age and in other ways, but we have we come together through a shared passion of netball, and it's just a brilliant feeling to all be like at the end of a match going, yeah, we've done it, we've worked really hard and we deserve this.
And even if you don't win, is there a sense of success in that? Bizarrely, a success even though you didn't come out on top of score. Do you ever talk about how it actually felt and how did you perform?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, we definitely talk about that. We talk about as a team of if somebody makes a mistake, it's about, okay, just shake it off, just keep going. We're all kind of throwing encouragement whilst we're playing, etc. And afterwards, So, sometimes members of the team can feel that they didn't play as well as they wanted to, and that's when we all kind of huddle round and kind of go, do you know what? You did the best you can, and that is good enough. And we're a team. It's not one person. We're all in it together. So we do talk about that, and it's really important. And that's why we've got the connection and the relationship within the team that we've got, and I'm really proud of it. It's brilliant. It's great fun.
Wouldn't it be great if all businesses were full of that passion and mentality. That it's not always just about winning today. It's about how did we perform as a community, as a team.
Absolutely. And for me, I can think of, a couple of times, a number of times throughout my HR career where I've managed teams where we've been, quite a long project, which is, high stakes, very, very important to the organisation. And one of the things that I felt was one of the important things that I did was every week we celebrated a success. We when we had that team meeting, we didn't kind of go, right, no, so what's the big hill we've got to climb next week? It's about, right, guys, no, this is about what have we've achieved this week. We've hit some major milestones. And I saw that as part of my role of absolutely, let's have a moment to breathe before we tackle the next thing. And just those incremental successes, I try and do that throughout my my work now. Being a business owner, kind of working on my own. Every week, I kind of 3 things. What have I done this week? 3 things that I can say, yeah, that was good.
Brilliant. Okay, I could talk forever on this, but I'm going to bring it to a bit of a conclusion here. So first thing I'd love to ask you, because I'm curious, is do you have a favourite quote?
I have lots of favourite quotes, but the quote that really resonates with me at the moment is a quote by Ginny Rometty, who is the chairman, president and CEO of IBM. Right. And it really resonates with me because she says about growth and comfort don't coexist.
Growth and comfort don't coexist.
Yeah. So she talks about the other part of the quote is, I learned to always take on things I've never done before, because growth and comfort don't coexist.
That's lovely.
I think it's brilliant.
That. Yeah, I like that.
For me, it really resonates because if you want to succeed and you want to grow, and you can't expect to feel comfortable in the new things that you do. Everybody has a little bit of intrepidation, and for me, it's about framing that in your mind. You could see that as really scary, or you could see that as really exciting.
Yeah.
You have a choice.
It's interesting. I remember years ago competing in a triathlon in Stratford, and the T-shirt on that, which sadly isn't anymore. It's been through more washes than I care to imagine. But on the chest, it said, "Pain is just weakness leaving the body," which is kind of along that same lines. I like that. It's a really good quote. That it's lovely. That.
Yeah. So, do you have it? I'm curious if you have any other famous quotes that really resonate for you.
That's an easy one. One that always comes to mind is Maya Angelou. People will forget what you say and what you do, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And that has stuck with me so many times. I can think of a number of times, and if I think about it too much, it either makes me laugh or well up, because you think back to how that person actually made you feel. So that's something I try and live by, is remembering that, you said it earlier on, we're human beings, not doings, and to be, it's how people feel. So people will forget what you say and do, but will always remember how you made them feel. So that's my favourite.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, my last question, which I'll ask, is this. If you could travel in time and you could leave the younger, earlier career Fran a note in an envelope based on what you know now, what message would you leave yourself?
That is a brilliant question. Thank you. I love this. I love this. So for me, the quote that I would leave myself is, trust yourself to be yourself. And that was said to me by a very dear friend and colleague, somebody we both know, Mel Greaves.
Right.
And it really resonates. That's what I would have liked to say to myself. Trust yourself to be yourself.
Brilliant. Fran, thank you ever so much for joining me on the podcast. So again, we'll put the links for people, how they can get in contact in the comments with the podcast. So that's it. Thanks very much.
It's been a pleasure, Ian. Thank you for the invite. I've thoroughly enjoyed the time with you.
Super.
So great to talk.
Thanks. So this has been One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, and this time with Fran Lee Rogers. If you've enjoyed what you've listened to today, please do subscribe. And you can find more information about how to make contact with any of our guests or us in the comments section below. Thanks very much.